Well, hey, crafty friends, it's Hiedi Scott.
And Briar Scott.
And we are coming live to you from the kitchen to show you little neck clams and to tell you about them. And I'm going to give you my recipe, which really isn't a recipe, but I'm going to show you everything start to finish. So as you were hopping on, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. Feel free to sprinkle all that normal good stuff. Okay, so let me just show you. Hubby bought how many pounds?
4 pounds, approximately 4 pounds of little neck clams, not to be confused with middle neck or large neck.
Okay, yeah, the littler the better because the more tender they are, right?
Sweeter.
Sweeter.
But not manila, those are teeny. These are the next size up.
Okay, and these have been sitting in cold water in the sink in this glass bowl for around 20-30 minutes. What they're doing right now is they're spitting because these come from like the sandy.
These are from Virginia.
Sandy beds in the ocean.
Yeah.
And they can have little pieces of sand inside of them. These are still alive, by the way. Tell everybody what the story is if you buy clams and they're open.
Yeah, so when you go to the fishmonger or the fish market or Whole Foods, I probably shouldn't name any names, but any fish market, you want to look to make sure the clams are not even slightly opened behind the fridge, behind the glass. Always ask to go back into the refrigerator and get new ones that are already in a bag that's sealed. And then take a look at them. I noticed some stores will not allow you to touch them, but you don't need to.
Why do you not want them to be open?
Because that means the temperature was too warm, and they're actually trying to kind of get out of the
They're
shell.
dead, basically.
They're dying. They're in the process of dying.
And sometimes you can tell by the smell. Okay. Occasionally you're going to have a couple with the shells that are broken because these are heavy. How many pounds was this?
4 pounds.
And it was less than $30. So what did we work that math out to be?
It's about $6.95 a pound. But remember that these shells are calcium. That's the bulk of the weight is the shell, not the
Look, Maddie's on. Hey, Maddie. That's our daughter-in-law. And I see Susan and Cookie and Deb and Missy and a whole bunch of other people on. Okay, so first thing you want to do, and we'll hear some more about clams from my hubby in just a minute. You can stay here with me.
Yeah.
First thing that you want to do is you want to let them spit in cold water. If you skip that step, then they'll have grains of sand in them. They'll feel gritty when you eat them. I've read that it's good to soak them in milk, but I have never tried that. Okay, I'm going to put this over.
That.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I'll tell you guys about that.
Okay, I'm going to drain this. You tell them about it right now.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that I'm from New England, so these kind of clams, I'm pretty picky about those clams, and they have to be the right size, and you actually have to see them. Never let someone give you clams.
Keep going.
Okay, so my parents would go down to the pier where they had a fish market, and we just pick out different size clams. The bigger ones were cherry stones. Those are also large neck clams. But I really like the little neck and middle neck clams. I don't think you can get middle neck here in Georgia. That's
This
a little
is about
neck.
what the size is. 1 to 2 inches.
Yeah.
Basically.
So it's all about how these clams are taken care of once they're taken out of their environment, and then it's all about how you take care of them, bringing them back. So when they put them in a plastic bag, you'll notice
he's very picky about this.
They never will close the bag because these clams are alive and
they're still breathing.
They've got to breathe and they've got to get some air, so you can't close the bag up at all. And
you guys, if you are new to making clams, you would be surprised. The butcher at this very nice store that we like to go to, they didn't know any of this. They tried to sell us clams that smelled, that were open, that were clearly would make you sick.
I wouldn't even, that wouldn't be me.
Anyway, so he grew up eating clams and all kinds of seafood. He grew up in, would you call that New England?
Yeah,
Okay.
southern New England.
So I grew up in potato country in Idaho, and we did not eat clams. That was like about as exciting as we ever got was to have king crab legs, which I still love those. But anyways, okay, so I've let those spit and I just poured the water out. And now what I'm gonna do is get the pot going. And let me put this over a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing on my stove. And you can hang out or whatever, or talk or whatever you want to do. Okay, I'm gonna start with some butter. And I'm gonna use about, this says a fourth a cup, about half a stick of butter. Come on, wake up. We constantly have this issue. There we go. After we get the house cleaned, because I guess too much water or something gets in there. Okay, so I just put some butter in here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to use my new garlic press from Pampered Chef. I'm so excited to finally have this, and we're going to do some garlic in this butter for a couple minutes or until it's fragrant. So half a stick of butter, and then we'll probably use the other part of that to melt for us to dip the clams in when we eat them. And we bought crusty bread, which is just, you know, a good French bread. Come on. Okay. So with this garlic press, you do not have to take off every single bit of the outside of your garlic. Just cut a little bit of this off right here. I'm going to pop it in this inside of my garlic press. And look at how that does that, even though there was still the skin in there. So then I'll just pull that out and toss it. Let's do another one. I'm going to do about, don't go away, Briar. I'm going to do about 3 cloves of garlic. It's going to smell so good. We're going to be using wine, which you don't have to if you don't want to. All of the alcohol will get cooked out of it, but it just gives a nice flavor. And for that part, you do not need a fancy, any kind of fancy wine. I'm using this bottle of Chardonnay right here that was $6.50. So it doesn't have to be fancy. Okay, tell us some more clam facts, Briar. Come in the thing while I'm working on this.
Okay, so a lot of people know about clams from what they hear about, and there's a thing called a clam bake. We're not going to talk too much about that here, but a clam bake actually is not even made up of mostly clams. It's mostly because of the clam juice, and you have clams sprinkled about it, but it's mostly lobster, other seafood, corn on the cob, small pieces, broken up, and potatoes. So that kind of brings together
maybe that's why we got married.
From New England, where I'm from,
and potatoes where I'm from. Okay, next step. I have a couple of lemons that I just sliced in half, and I am using my old cruddy citrus press. One of the things I'm gonna order for myself when I place my first Pampered Chef order is the citrus press thing that they have, because it looks so much better than this. This is messy. Anyway, so this is two lemons, and they are a little hard. They would be better if they were softer.
So back to the wine that Heidi put in there.
I haven't done it yet, but I will.
When you put the wine in there, it should be really dry wine. It shouldn't be sweet. So the best kind is the German, really dry type of wine.
Or you can use an inexpensive.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Chardonnay.
expensive at all, but it's just for the taste.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got that's gonna be hot. Let me get a pot holder. I've got my garlic and lemon cooking in butter. And now I'm going to add some wine, and I never measure when I'm making this just on my own, but let's do that so I can tell you roughly how much it is. Hang on, honey. Okay, I would say at least a cup. More if you want, that's up to you. And I'm going to probably do 2 cups of water. Okay, let me get that. So Briar, when was the first time you had clams as a little boy?
So I had clams that I can remember probably when I was about 5 or 6. It was a mainstay in our diet. And actually lobster was too. But lobster, this is really about clams, but lobster was on the coast of New England, especially Maine. It's one of the cheapest dishes. Funny story that off the coast, or very close to Boston, the cheapest food to feed prisoners was at one point, historically, lobsters. To the point it's such a rich meat, just like clams are very rich, so you don't want to eat too much, that the prisoners actually got tired of it. And they were getting sick, and they did not want any more. So it's all about moderation, but especially with clams and lobster, you don't want to eat too much because it's so rich. And that's about having other things with it. That's
We're having salmon also from Costco for dinner. And bread, crusty bread. Let me show you this. This is just nothing fancy, but this is bread from Whole Foods that I just sliced up. It's delicious with some butter spread on it, dipped in the juice. These clams are going to be cooked in. So I have about 2 cups of water, 1 cup of wine, half a stick of butter, 2 lemons, and about 3 garlic cloves in here. And I'm just heating them up. I want it to get going a little bit before I start adding my clams in one at a time. You don't just dump them in, you're gonna gently place them in. And then I'll show you how it's going to, they'll open.
And it doesn't take very long, and it takes a little bit to break the shells, but usually if they break, it's going to break on the outside. So that's why you don't want to dump them in. You want to place them in one at a time, or maybe a few at a time.
Yeah, okay. We're just figuring out this space here in my kitchen because I never record out here, so we're in this one teeny little spot here in the kitchen. And you haven't ever done a video with me, have you?
I absolutely have.
Oh, you have?
I've done many drawings.
Drawings?
Drawings, as far as
Oh,
people
yes.
winning.
When I had giveaways, he's done that lots, yeah. Okay, so I'm just checking to see if this is getting warm before we start putting everything in there. Cooking clams is a fast and easy dinner, and I make mine like you are. Enjoy your dinner. Peggy says that. Peggy lives in Hawaii. Hey, Peggy. How are the clams in Hawaii? Are they good? He always asks where the clams are from. And I was looking online. You can get clams from both the West Coast, Pacific, and the East Coast, Atlantic. And apparently, they're both, this size are both called little neck, but they're 2 different species is what I read today.
Oh, there's probably 15 different species.
Yeah.
And the The Manilas are really in a different category because they're only going to ever get pretty, not that big, but they're also pretty sweet. But
So this is what they look like. Where would you find clams if you were like in the Midwest? Where would you buy
in the
them?
Midwest?
Yeah.
You would. There's freshwater clams and then there's saltwater.
Well, no, not alive. Where would you find them to buy them? I'm thinking that most fancy grocery stores in the fish case would have them, don't you think?
Well, it really depends. Well, because in the Midwest, most people are not going to be eating clams.
But I had somebody asking already.
Yeah, so you can find them in mostly like Whole Foods does have them, but
Yeah.
it's going to vary different geographies.
Or organic grocery stores. My friend Michelle Shad, she lives in the Midwest. I can't remember where. But anyway, she was asking earlier where she wanted to watch this because she wanted to know how to do these. They're so easy. And she wanted to know where. Okay, Peggy's answering. Theirs are flown in from the West Coast, but the rest of their seafood is fresh off the fishing boats in Hawaii. Thanks, Peggy. I wondered about that. Okay, it's starting to boil. Let me move my camera over here so that you can see. And I'm gonna just, not getting my fingers in there, I'm gonna drop a couple at a time in there. And I'm looking, and I'm gonna show you the bottom of this bowl before I pour it out. Because you can see, I've drained this a couple of times. Oh, there's a broken shell. You can see how much sand is in the bottom, and that would be in your clams if you didn't let them spit. So the spitting thing is crucially important. And I don't know, I don't feel like they're ever really very dirty, but I'm gonna eat the juice that we're cooking it in with dipping bread in it. So I want the outside of my clam shells to be reasonably clean. So that's why letting them spit is important. Okay, so this is what is in the bottom of my bowl. Can you see that? There's actual sand in there. So I don't want to eat that.
So when you're doing these clams, it's really important, and I've been there many times. You want to make sure these clams fully open and that they're steamed for at least 3 minutes.
It's going to be a little bit longer than
Probably
that.
3 minutes fully steamed once they've opened. And the reason why is in some parts of Florida and Southern California where they get the clams, if there's any kind of bacteria or algae, this will kill it, because if something's contaminated, even after you cook it, you honestly could get really sick. So, but probably, you know, if they're delivering these clams, they're probably just going to be fine. But that's another reason why you don't want to get clams that have already opened, or if they don't smell right, then you don't want those clams.
Yeah. Okay, so I know you always kind of tell me don't move them around too much, but I like to just take some of the juice and pour it over the top, and I can see this clam right here. Well, it's going to be hard for me to show you. It's already starting to open. So it's been a little difficult to read your comments, but I will read everything when I'm finished. If you liked, we're not done, but if you liked this video, do this or this. Feel free to sprinkle. Feel free to ask me your questions. I will write out that recipe when we're done. But if you missed the beginning, so I started by letting my clams spit in cold water for 30 minutes at least. And then I put in my pot on the stove 3 pieces of garlic that I pressed in my handy dandy Pepper Chef garlic press with half a stick of butter, 2 lemons that I I squeezed about 1 cup of white wine that's dry and about 2 cups of water. And that's it. We didn't add any salt. It's gonna taste a little bit salty because my butter is salted and these came from, you know, the ocean. So it's gonna have plenty of salt in it. Anyways, let's see, somebody's just saying, my son who does some of my Bible studies is just like his dad. Can you call Christian or text him and tell him that we're live? Because he keeps calling. Yeah, they both remind me very much of my husband. So I did not grow up making clams. I don't really think I even had clams until I moved to Seattle after I graduated from law school. My first job was in downtown Seattle, and that was where I had my first experience with clams and oysters and a lot of different seafood. And I just kind of learned how to do this, by having them in restaurants and knowing what I liked and what I didn't like. And to me, I love lots of garlic and lots of butter. So even though there's butter in here, I will also melt some butter in some little bowls for us to dip our clams in. Okay, so they're starting to open. I'm going to show you that. And then let me know if you would like information for Pampered Chef. That's the new company that I have an affiliation with that I'm representing alongside the other companies that I work with. And they have some great kitchen gadgets, some of which I'm using here now. A lot that I would like to add to my Pampered Chef collection because over the years I have accumulated quite a few things and everything lasts and is such good quality. Anyways, you can say Pampered Chef or Chef in the comments and I'll send you a link to my page. And I will get this recipe written down and I'll put that in the comments. Okay, so this one right here is starting to open. You can see that. You want them to fully open. And I'm just going to turn my heat up a little bit. I don't want to scorch my butter, but I need it to be hot enough, like almost to a boil, for these guys to completely open. And then we don't drain them. What we'll do is we'll use some kind of a dish like this and a soup ladle, and we'll just scoop, you know, 10 or 15 clams that are open and the juice into a bowl. And then we'll serve it with crusty bread and butter. And you can add more lemon if you would like. Super yummy. Okay. It's starting to boil. And they're also starting to open. I want to stay on with you long enough to show you what those look like when they do fully open. And oh, I see one. They're going to all do this. And that's how you know that they're ready. You don't ever eat them if, okay, here's something else to know. Briar, come in the video.
Okay.
What if they don't open?
Well, if they don't open, then there could be too much weight on them if they're at the bottom and the other clams are on top of them pushing it down. So if there's a lot opening on top, take those off, make sure they're done. Then you can just take them out of the pot, put them in the dish, and then keep the other ones center where the flame is, and eventually most of them will open.
But what if there are some that just don't ever open?
Well, if they don't open,
should you eat them?
No, you absolutely should not eat them. And you don't want to try to pry them open, but out of maybe, like this is perhaps 40 clams, you might have 1, 2, or 3 that don't open, but it's pretty rare that more than one is not going to open. That's extremely rare.
And if we've made clam making sound complicated or difficult, we absolutely did not mean to.
It's simple,
super
but
easy.
it's fun, and it's not just cooking like anything. It's fun, and it's an experience, and that's part of it.
We wanted to do clams on 4th of July, but when we went to Whole Foods, they did not have any, and the other 2 fish places were not open. So we opted to make lobster rolls instead. And then husband said today, well, do you want to try to do clams tonight? I said, yeah. We do them probably once a month.
Yeah, so the clams come in to where we got them. I mentioned, in this case, in Alpharetta, Georgia. They come in about twice a day. So if you don't get there early in the morning, I knew they were coming in at 2 o'clock. So I got there right at a few minutes after, and they had a new batch coming in. And you want to ask those kind of questions, like, do they just come in once a day? Okay, that's great. But if it's not coming in at least once a day,
are they chewy?
that's not what a real fresh fish market would be.
What would you say? Are clams chewy?
They can be. Yeah, usually
the amount of
the
meat
larger
is-
ones, middle neck and large neck or cherry stone are. Smaller ones, manila and the little neck, are typically not.
So this is what they look like when they are cooked. There's not a lot of meat in there. It's really just a delicacy. Sometimes we'll eat this for our meal with lots of bread with butter and maybe some brie cheese. But tonight we're having this as just a little appetizer before we eat some salmon.
It would be very difficult to have these little neck clams as your main meal, because we got 4 pounds between the 2 of us, and sounds like a lot, but it's the weight of the shell, so it's really not that much, but it's really for the taste. So you could have less as an appetizer, but for one person, 1 pound is not a lot.
Yeah.
2 pounds, that's more. And then if you have that with something else, pair it with salmon or lobster, I would say it's kind of rich, unless you're from a coastal area where your body's used to that. Your body's going to go, whoa, that's really rich food.
Okay, I just turned my heat down. I'm going to show you real close what this looks like, because I think these are 90% finished. And then we will say goodbye, but I hope you guys liked meeting my husband. And
Great
maybe
meeting
you
everybody.
maybe you can do more cooking videos with me in
Well,
the
we're
future.
going to, at some point in the future, we're going to actually do a clam bake, but that takes a little preparation, and we'll let everybody know in advance.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, honey. All right, so let me show you. They're like all really starting to open. And we're going to be good to go here shortly. Anyways, this was just something different. I hope you liked it. If you wanted any information on kitchen gadgets, say, they're not slimy, Meredith. They're so yummy, especially when they're dipped in butter. Just say Pampered Chef or Chef, and I'll send you a link to my website, and you can have a peek. There's a lot of gadgets there that I wish I had for cooking right now, but I'll just accumulate more as I'm going along. They have a lot of new things too. Anyways, have a blessed and wonderful rest of your day. We're going to have a yummy appetizer of some steamed clams, and then we're going to have our salmon. All right, I'll see you later.